Hi there, and welcome to the Salt and Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we're going to make an orange spiced bread with candied orange slices. And it is absolutely fantastic. It's probably the best breakfast bread slash dessert cake kind of thing because it sort of fits into both categories. It's absolutely fantastic. The first thing we have to do is get our Ninja Foodi heated up with 2 cups of water. So I'm going to pour in 2 cups of water, and we're going to put the Ninja Foodi onto sear saute on high and hit start. Now there's a couple different ways you can approach this step. You can do what I'm doing, which is just going ahead and sauteing it. It's going to come up to a boil, and then we're going to throw in our orange slices. Or you could actually put the pot under pressure and put just 0 minutes. That's going to bring it all to a boil, and then you could throw in your orange slices. But for this step, we're just going to go ahead and use the sear saute while we get our orange cut up. So what you want to do when you're going to cut an orange for, this is going to be candied orange halves, and because we're going to do a little decoration on the top of the bread with these at the end. So I'm going to cut it straight down the middle here. Because remember, whenever you're going to be cutting slices, you definitely want to have a flat surface to cut on. Okay, it's going to make it a lot safer, easier, and really faster for you. So you want to do that. And then we're just going to take off. I'm going to take off a bit here at the end. Now you'll see there's hardly any orange there, and I want that because I'm going to actually take the orange pulp out of this, and I'm going to put it in thin strips. We're going to candy those as well, and they're going to go inside of the bread, whereas the whole slices are going to be kind of twisted a little bit on top and make a real cute decoration. Wait till you see. All right, so now for the rest of the slices, I want them to be thin. So this is about 1/4 inch, and I'm going to just go straight down and try to be as uniform as I can. Watch your fingers, of course. So I'm doing this pretty slow because I really want to make sure that I'm getting the right size slices. If they're too thin, they're not going to hold their shape enough. If they're too thick, they're going to be too hard to bend at the end. So we do want to have them about 1/4 inch. And we need a total of about 12 to 14 is best. That way, if you have any duds at the end, you don't need to, you're not scrambling for an extra orange slice. We'll use about 12 on the top of the bread. And 1 orange is plenty. So let's see. Right now we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So we're in real good shape here. That's a little thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the pulp out of this one and use that as the part that we put inside the bread. I'm going to do the same with the other orange. And even this bottom part I'm going to end up using. Okay, I'm just going to do it a little bit different. So I'm going to slide these, keep these nice slices in one section, and just move the other ones to the other side. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I can already hear this water starting to simmer a little bit. So see, it does not take much time at all to bring this up to a boil. And then what we're going to do is throw in these orange slices, but just for about a minute or so. And why we're doing that is to remove the bitterness from the rind. And that's how you do it. You just put them in just plain water. Then we'll dump the water, we'll add sugar and water, we'll make like a little simple syrup, and we'll throw our orange slices in there to get the part of the candied orange peel that we want. All right, so we're starting to see some steam, and I'm starting to see a few little bubbles on the very bottom. That means I can go ahead and throw in the orange slices. And what I did with the very ends that have that little stem on the bottom is I just cut those off. We're just going to discard those. Put all these in the pot here. This is just a navel orange, okay? So, and I recommend getting something that's along those lines. You don't want like a little clementine because their skin is not sturdy enough for what we want to do. So definitely like a navel orange would be the best, I think. So we're just going to set these down in the water, and we're going to bring it up to a boil. Now, the reason why I didn't put the orange peels in and then put it under pressure is I really don't want them to be subjected to that much heat. So if you want to put the pot under pressure and not wait for it to come up to a simmer on its own, you can do that, but leave the orange peels out until after it comes up to pressure. release the steam, open the lid, throw them in, and just let them sit for a minute or two, and that would be just fine. All right, so I just heated up my water. I just put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. This is a 1/4 cup of water, which is now hot. It is too hot right now to proof the yeast. You want to make sure that your water is somewhere between, I'd say 100 and 104 degrees is probably optimal, but anything greater than 110 will kill your yeast, so you don't want it to be, boiling right out of the microwave. So what I'm gonna do here is just let it sit and cool off a little bit. You're gonna know when it's the correct temperature with or without a thermometer. You're gonna be able to put your finger in there and not feel the need to pull right back away, which if I put it in here, I want to get it out of there. It's still too hot. Think of bath water is about 104 to 108 degrees, and that's what you want your temperature of your water to be, so you can just use that as a guide. So our orange slices have started to simmer in here. The water came to a boil very fast, as it does. And I'm just going to give them a stir around, and then we're going to get them out of here. We just need a quick little minute-long boil, if you will, to get the bitterness out. So I'm using my scoop and drain here, which is a handy, nifty tool because it's good for non-stick surfaces, just to scoop these out. And we're gonna put them right into this colander. They're not gonna drain too much, and it's just water with a little orange juice, so I'm not worried about it draining onto the cutting board or anything. And then we dump this water. And then I will go ahead and put it under pressure just to show you guys. You could do the same thing again with the sugar water. You could just bring it right back up to temperature with a simmer. But just to show you, especially, I know I get a lot of questions about things that call for a 0 pressure cook time. That's confusing. How do you cook something for 0 minutes? Well, I'm going to show you. So I'm just going to turn this off and get these little mitts. This water, this orange water, you don't want to keep, okay? It's going to be bitter. You just dump it out. Okay, so I'm going to make a simple syrup in the Ninja Foodi. And this can be used for all kinds of things. Like if you're making a sweet tea, you could follow the same instructions, but we're going to use it to candy our orange peels. So I have 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 cups of sugar. You could use any amount that you wanted. So you could use 2 cups of water to 2 cups of sugar. Just equal amounts of both will make a good simple syrup for you. I'm just going to move this around a little bit just to kind of start it to get a little dissolved. And we're going to go ahead and put on the pressure cooker lid. Now again, you could just do the sear saute on high until it gets hot enough and all the sugar's dissolved. But this is just as easy, and it's like, don't even pay any attention to it. It's hands off. So put the valve to seal in the back. Turn the Ninja Foodi on, hit the pressure, high is fine, and the time defaults to 10, but we're gonna go all the way down to 0 and hit start. So what that means is that there's not gonna be any true pressure cooking time, but the pot's gonna heat up to where it goes under pressure, and then we're just gonna immediate release it, and we're gonna have a perfect simple syrup inside at the end. So it's just 0 minutes of pressure cooking time, but it is heating up, so it is like cooking, so to speak. So when foods call for 0 pressure cooking time, it's using the heat that's generated during the time that the Ninja Foodi is coming to pressure to cook your food. So that's why they do 0 minutes. Hope that helps. Okay, I did the finger test on the water, and I can hold it there, no problems. And I also did a little temp here, and we were sitting at about 104. So I think we're pretty good here. I'm going to add in sugar. Yeast loves sugar in moderation, like we should all have sugar in moderation. So yeast does not like a ton of sugar, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the video about why we have a long proof on this bread. But for right now, I'm going to get in the teaspoon of sugar that the yeast does want. Give that a little stir around. That's also going to help cool down if there's any hot spots in your water. The microwaves don't really heat very evenly. So I'm just going to stir this around a little bit, and then I'm going to put the yeast in. Now my yeast is actually does not need to go through this proofing process, but if you get a packet of yeast that does, I just wanted to show you how it works. So we're just going to mix that up and leave it alone. Now, you want to give your yeast a good amount of time to bloom, as we call it. It's going to get really frothy, and it's kind of cool. So we're just going to leave this to the side while we start to get our bread ingredients together. So the red button popped up, meaning that the pot is under pressure. I can hear it boiling away in there, so it's definitely turned into simple syrup now. And I'm just waiting for it to just say 0. Now I can interrupt the process right now. I could just turn the Ninja Foodi off, vent it, and move on. But anyway, it's so quick. There it goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and vent the steam. Okay, good. So now I'm going to open up the lid, do that away from you because this steam is very, very hot. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the sear saute back on to high and hit start. So I've got my orange slices. Now the ones that I'm going to use for the decoration, I'm just going to throw in just like they are. Now don't touch that simple syrup. It would really burn you bad. But I'm just going to kind of throw those in. You can also, to be a little safer, put them on here and throw them in. Now what I'm going to do is keep out the ones that we're going to use inside. So if I see like a little tiny one, I'm going to move that out. Remember, I only need 12 for the bread. That one looks pretty good. That one looks a little thin, not like it's not going to hold up, so I'm going to take that one out. That one's a little thin. I'm going to take that one out. You'll really appreciate what they look like after they're done the first little boiling. You can really tell what you want to use them for, so it's easy to decide which ones to leave in there for the decoration and which ones to cut up for inside the bread. That one looks actually pretty. And we'll use that one. Okay. So I'm just going to spread these out. And what they're doing is they're just going to simmer in this simple syrup for a while. And I'm also going to put those in, but I want to get them cut up just a little bit more, and I want to get the pulp removed. So if it's something like this, I'm just going to go around the edge and remove the actual orange flesh. And I'm even going to take these and go halfway down. I want these into little thin strips because we're going to dice them up even further and put them in our bread. And it doesn't matter if you wanted to cut them in half too. It doesn't make a difference because like I said, we're going to dice them up. All right, and then also throw those in because they need to get candied as well. All right, so while that's cooking for just a few minutes, let's get back to our bread because I don't know if you could see this, but that is some proofed yeast. I mean, look at that. It has just puffed up like crazy. So we know we are gonna have a good rise in our bread. And that's good because we're challenging bread a little bit here today, guys. And I'm gonna get into that in just a few minutes. But what I'm gonna start out with for our bread is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And we have 2 teaspoons of cloves, a tablespoon of ground cinnamon. Of course, we have our yeast here, which I'm gonna fold in. I'm gonna fold this in before I add in the salt because salt can inhibit yeast a little bit. So I'm just gonna add this in before I add in the salt. All right, so I'm just gonna fold this in. Now we are gonna use more flour, but for right now, I just wanted to start out with the 2 cups. All right, now I've got some melted butter. This is a half of a stick of melted butter. I'm gonna put that in there. Fold that in. I'm kind of multitasking. You could do one thing at a time if you wanted to, but I like to get the bread started while the candied oranges are finishing up. Okay, that looks good. We can dump in it's about a cup and a couple tablespoons, really. It's 6 ounces of dried cranberries. So we're gonna add those in. Oh, it's already smelling good. I love that. Now we can add in our salt. And we're gonna stop this process right now to finish up our candied orange peels. So I'm just gonna move this over to the side here. And I'm gonna get out the sugar, which I have in a little Tupperware container. This is just 1 cup of sugar. And we're gonna use tongs to take the orange rinds out. We're gonna kind of coat them in the sugar. You could do a bunch at a time. I'm just kind of showing you how to do it with just one at a time. Now they're not hot once they get into the sugar. They cool down almost immediately. And I'm just gonna kind of dredge them in the sugar, and we're gonna put them on our rack here to dry. Now I did try to use the dehydration function on the Ninja Foodi because I thought, oh, you know, cool, I could use another function. You know what, it didn't help any. I mean, you'd have to really do it for a long time. It didn't help. This worked just as well. So I might need to add more sugar to this, but was hoping a cup would do it. This is not low cal, but it is delicious. And I'm trying to keep their shape, you know, into these pretty shapes like they are, just little orange slices. Okay, so see, this one kind of fell apart. And that's what I'm talking about, like having a few extras. Now I could make this work, but it did kind of fall apart. So that would be like my last resort. I wouldn't want to use that one on top if I had a choice. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. What's telling me it's probably they're getting a little overcooked. So let's keep dropping these in. Now don't get rid of the simple syrup because we are gonna use that as our liquid in our bread. And we're gonna also infuse it with a little bit more flavor by adding in some citrus tea. And I'll show you that in just a minute. Let me just finish getting these out of here. Now I'm putting a whole bunch in because what I'm gonna do is just shake this up. I think I'm gonna move over to my scoop to scoop out these small pieces. That'll make it a lot quicker. Now I want to be gentle when I shake this up. Okay, I don't want to, you know, break up the oranges or anything, but I kind of want to get this done quickly. What I might do is just dump a little more sugar on top too. All right, so I just grabbed a little bit more sugar. I'm going to put it on top here just to make it a little bit easier because I had to dump all those in pretty quickly to get them out of that water before they soften too much, or out of that syrup, I should say. Our oranges are gonna dry on that rack for a little bit, and meantime we are going to infuse some orange flavored tea into our simple syrup. So I'm just gonna pour this out. Now remember, it's extremely hot, so be careful. And I'm using a colander because I wanna get out any of those orange pieces. I just want plain liquid. I don't want any pieces or much pulp or anything like that. Okay, so that is done. I can set that over there for now. And what I have here is 2 tea bags, and they are wild sweet orange from Tazo. Now you could use any orange spice tea that you like, or you could omit this step, but I'll tell you, the end bread is so fantastic. And I really think that this added a lot of flavor. We're gonna use a cup of this simple syrup infused with tea in our bread. And so what has to happen here is this has to steep for a few minutes, and we also want this temperature to cool down, because if we dump that into our bread right now, we're gonna kill that yeast. It's just too hot. So now we just take a little break and let this steep and cool down to about room temperature is what I wanna see, and that'll give the oranges a chance to start to dry. So I probably let this steep about 10 minutes or so. I can start to see some of the tea color come out of the bags, and the temperature is coming down nicely. So I also checked these, and they have dried enough. Now, they're not going to be as dry as our larger orange slices. Oh my gosh, but they're so good. So they are perfect to put in the bread. I probably have about a half of a cup here, but if it was a quarter of a cup, don't worry about it. It's fine. Whatever little bit that you have left over after you do your slices, that's what we're going to use, and it's fine. So I'm just going to take my knife and just roughly chop them. perfect. We're gonna add those in to the bread mixture that we've started. All right. So now we need to get a little bit more liquid into our bread to actually form the dough ball. And we're gonna use this simple syrup. Now I mentioned earlier in the video that yeast loves sugar, but not this much sugar. So this is gonna be a very slow rising bread. We're gonna start it off in the Ninja Foodi, and usually I use the dehydrate function, but I thought what I would show you guys, because I know a lot of you don't have the dehydration function, is another little tip that I do when I'm gonna make bread and I don't wanna use the dehydration. I'll use the bake roast. So we'll turn this on, we're gonna select the bake roast, and we're gonna take the temperature all the way down to 250. And hit start. We're just gonna let that heat up for a few minutes. It's gonna build up some heat inside the pot, and then that's going to help proof our bread a little bit faster. We're not gonna get a big rise out of this bread, but don't worry about it. We don't need to, but we are gonna proof it a little bit in there. All right, so I wanna take out 1 cup of this liquid. That's all you need is 1 cup. And that'll do it. Now the leftover you could use in hot tea if you like it a little sweet. Oh my gosh, it would be absolutely delicious. Now remember, I only have 2 cups of flour in here, so this is gonna get kind of soupy pretty quickly, but that's okay because we're gonna add some more. Oh, the smell right now. I wish I could really describe it. Like, it's a little citrusy. You can get the smell of the cloves. I mean, it's really fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So what I want to do is just fold this in, fold it all together till we get a nice wet looking dough. And then we're going to add in some flour. Now usually I use about 3.5 cups total of the flour, but I have measured out 4 because we're also going to put some down on our kneading surface. But for right now, I want to get in, I'm just using 1/3 of a cup measuring cup. Doesn't matter, you can use a 1/2 cup, whatever. Because we're just going to add this in. I'll probably do 2 of them right now. And then just kind of fold it until the dough starts to come together and look more like bread dough. So right now we have what looks like a cake batter. So we want to make it into a dough batter or a dough ball. And it's going to be a dark looking bread, and that's because of the cloves and the cinnamon in there. So that is the right color for this bread. Still need some more here. So now I have a total of 3 cups in there. And like I said, it's usually about 3.5 cups is what we need. All right, that's looking good to get down on our work surface to do the kneading. So this has been heating up just for a few minutes, and that's enough. Now I'm going to turn it off, but leave the lid closed while we finish up our bread and get it kneaded. Okay, so I'm going to put probably about 1/4 cup of flour down on a kneading surface, which I like to use this mat from Pampered Chef, but you could use a clean countertop or a large cutting board, whatever you have. You could also knead this in a bread machine, I would think. I don't think there'd be any problem with that, but you wouldn't want to start kneading it while it's this wet. You definitely want to add more flour to it. Or in a stand mixer. But I like to show you guys how easy it is to do things by hand because it really doesn't take that much more time. And I don't know, I love bread making, and I like the feel of when the dough is done by the feel of it, and so I like doing it by hand. Now I'm also going to put about another 1/3 of a cup on top here because I know I'm going to need that much. And then I'm going to press it down, and we're going to do the same thing that I do in all my other videos, which is that kind of fold and turn, fold and turn. Such a nice feeling dough. I mean, it's very, very soft. There's a lot of sugar in there. It's going to be a little sticky, but it's not too sticky. It's definitely not sticky like my Irish soda bread. Now, that bread recipe is absolutely delicious, and I'll link to that right up there as well because, man, that one's a good one. But so is this one. And then if you wanted a more traditional, just a white bread, I also have a homemade bread recipe, which I'll link to over there as well. So this is just a little sticky, so I'm gonna just add just a tiny bit more flour on top, kind of press it down, and now we should be able to get into the kneading. So what I do to knead the bread is just push forward, turn, bring it over, push, turn, fold it, push, turn, and I'm gonna repeat that for probably about, I don't know, 5 minutes, if that even. Might not even need that time. So what we're doing right now is just activating the gluten in the flour, and that's gonna give the dough, or the bread, the right kind of texture. All right, I think that's about enough. So we have about a half cup left, so I did use a total of 3.5 cups of flour, which I've used that same amount every single time that I've tested this bread. So I think that's a pretty safe bet. It's raining today too, and I didn't need to use any more. Sometimes you do when it's real humid. I mean, it feels a little sticky, like I could probably use a little tiny bit more, but I don't think it needs it, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so now we have our dough done, and I mean, it's already beautiful. I mean, you could see the orange pieces, you could see the craisins. I just think it's gorgeous. Now we're gonna go ahead and get it proofed for the first time. This is a double rise bread, and like I said before, we do challenge the yeast some with all the sugar that is in there with the simple syrup. Just a little bit of olive oil. I know that sounds weird, it's fine. You could also use butter, but there's gonna be enough butter in this recipe, trust me, because we're gonna add a little bit more butter. So I'm just gonna move this around here and kind of get that side coated and then get this side coated with that olive oil. And I'm not too worried about, like normally I would put it in a much larger pan so it could double in size. It's not gonna double. I will see a little bit of rise come up this way. So putting it in this pan is fine. Or you could use a larger one. Either way is fine. I'm just gonna sit it on the rack in the low position. Now we still have our heat in here, but it's not super hot. We're also not throwing the bread dough right down in there, so it's not gonna cause us any issues. And we're just gonna simply put that in the Ninja Foodi, close the lid, and let it go for about 30 minutes. You're not gonna get a huge rise, so don't worry about that, but about 30 minutes is just gonna be enough. Then we'll form it into our shape and we'll get it to rise overnight. Because yeah, this is an overnight bread. You gotta let it rise overnight. So you make it the day before and you cook it up on the morning that you wanna serve it. It's been about 30 minutes and I've checked on the bread a little bit. It did not rise very much and I didn't expect it to. It's just not going to because of all that sugar that we have in the bread. But it did rise a little bit. When I push down on it, it does start to kind of come back up, so it's a little spongy. It's also a little wet right now. So I decided I'm gonna put this flour on the workspace here, which is just, under a half of a cup. It's probably less than a quarter of a cup, actually. I'm just gonna move the bread out. I mean, it's gorgeous. It is a gorgeous bread, but I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit more flour just on the outside here. Just kind of move that around there. Oh, it feels good. When I press on it, it bounces back up. So I know we've got rise in there, and you saw that yeast. I mean, our yeast was definitely active. Okay, so now for the final step of the bread before it rises overnight is just to get it into our pan. Now you could use any kind of bundt pan that fits into the Ninja Foodi. I have a 7-inch Fat Daddy-O. It's smooth on the bottom, which is what I actually wanted. I didn't want one with the decorations, you know, that they have sometimes in the bundt pans. So mine's completely smooth. I'm just gonna put just a little bit of olive oil in there, not too much, but I wanna get it around the edges. I just don't want the bread to stick as it rises overnight. And then I'm actually gonna dump out the excess because I don't need a whole bunch in there because we're actually tomorrow, when we go to actually make the bread, because it'll rise overnight, I'm gonna put in some butter in there. It's gonna cook with butter. It's gonna bake with butter. It's so delicious. All right, so we have to form a center. Now I've done this a couple of ways, okay? I've rolled it out into a log, and folded it around and kind of tried to seam the ends together, and it didn't work out very well. It just didn't seam together like I wanted to. So what I found is actually to make it into a small round like this, and then just go into the center and just sort of hollow out the center some. And I just move it around like I'm making a big donut. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I'm making a big donut. And then when it's big enough to fit over, you just set it over the edge and just push it down into the pan. Now, when this rises up, which it will, it'll rise up just a little bit past this surface by tomorrow morning. So I want to make sure it's kind of even so it rises evenly, and that's great. Now, the only other thing that I do is cover it with a damp cloth. Now, what I'm using is a clean flour sack. I really love those, but any dish towel will work fine. And I'm just going to wrap it loosely, okay, and put it over in a draft-free place. So I'm probably just going to stick it in the oven. I don't plan on using the oven. I haven't used the oven since I got the Ninja Foodi, and that is the truth. So I'm just going to sit it in the oven because it'll be free from drafts. You can even turn the oven light on if you want. That'll provide a little bit of heat for the yeast, but no worries. Either way, it's going to rise overnight. So tomorrow morning when we wake up, we're going to have some fresh-made orange spice bread with candied orange slices. Oh, and the orange slices are in the back. They are just going to dry overnight. And I knock some of the sugar off because they don't need to be super sugary or anything. And I'm just going to let them dry overnight. And then we're going to have some delicious bread in the morning. All right, so here we go, the big reveal. So we let this rise in the oven overnight. And I did turn the light on because I'm telling you, I didn't think it was going to rise. I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to redo this recipe. But it did, and not a lot, and it's not going to. So this is what it looks like when you're done, okay? It just comes up above the pan just a little bit, and that's good enough. It's a delicious, delicious bread. So we're gonna go ahead and preheat the Ninja Foodi, turn the Ninja Foodi on, hit the bake roast function, and we're gonna go down to 325. And hit start. It's going to default to 20 minutes. Now, I already preheated it for about 5 minutes, and so I only have to go 5 more minutes, and that'll give me time just to make this design. So what you want to do if you decide to do this part is just these are scissors that I use only in the kitchen, and so they're super clean, and I don't use them, any other place but the kitchen. And you're going to go down about 1/2 inch and make a slit. Go about 1 inch to 1/2 inch over and make a slit, and do the same thing all along the bread. Okay, so that looks good. I got it some uneven. You know what? It doesn't matter. It's our bread, right? And then I just kind of take my fingers in there and I just twist. And I know it kind of looks weird, but it comes out looking really pretty at the end. So I just take it and twist. Take it and twist. And you'll feel how dense this bread is, but it is so good. You can even smell it right now. Like I can smell the cranberries. Now trust me, I know this doesn't look very pretty right now, but it really does turn out nicely. And it is an optional thing. You don't have to do it. But I don't have a fancy pan, so. So anyway, that's it. Now, the last thing we're gonna do is add in some butter. I mean, this is not low-cal, and so I just have 1/2 stick of melted butter. I'm just gonna kind of pull these in a little bit. I want the butter to drip down the sides. So the butter helps crisp up the outside of this bread. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we would end up with like a loaf that doesn't really have any crispiness on the outside. You know what I mean? It'll just be very soft. And I didn't want that. So I added the butter, and it worked on the other 2 loaves of bread that I made. You know what would be great to do too is use my cake tester to kind of pull the sides, because I don't want to overflow it, but I want to use this whole 1/2 stick of butter. So I'm just going to grab my handy dandy cake tester here, which I love. I use it all the time, and just take it down and pull this bread back in a little bit And then you'll see the butter will be able to go in a little bit easier. Yeah, that's gonna work great. And it'll keep my fingers clean. So that's perfect. Oh, this is wonderful. This is working good. So I was going to do this yesterday before I put it into the oven, but I thought, you know what? I wonder with that long rise time whether the butter would just kind of incorporate into the dough. So I didn't want to do it then. I wanted to wait until afterwards. I don't want it to get so full that it overflows. So it looks like I'm just about probably at the end here of what I'm going to be able to add in. All right, that's good. So there's a little bit left over. Oh, you know what? I never waste butter. Never. Okay, so let's get the Ninja Foodi. Actually, you know what? Let me grab the rack here because I don't want to leave this open for any length of time. And so I'll grab the rack and put this on the rack right now. And we're going to cook this for 20 minutes on the 325, but then we need to check it because we may need to either bump the heat down some, probably going to cover it with foil because this is going to bake up kind of dark, and I need to get the insides baked as well, so I might want to protect these with some foil before we continue on with the baking. So it's going to go in for 20 minutes, and then we will give it a check. Okay, so let's just set the time for 20 minutes and we will bake our bread. So we've been cooking for about 20 minutes and yes, I did peek once or twice. And you can do that too. You can just lift up the lid and take a peek. Because it was smelling so good, I thought, oh my gosh, is this getting overcooked? But it's not, it's perfect. So 20 minutes, it's perfect. Now it's not finished, it's not finished cooking. We still need to go longer, but we do need to protect that top because it's getting quite brown. So what I'm gonna do is when this time goes out, it'll say cool, and that lasts like a few seconds, and then the Ninja Foodi will turn off. And we'll take the bread out and we're gonna temp it at this point. And that's kind of cool. I mean, I don't usually take temperatures of bread, but it can be done. And I want this bread to probably be around the 200 degree mark. Between 190 and 200 will be fine, but I think 200 with the butter is probably a better goal to aim for without overcooking the outside, of course. So it's, you know, it's a balancing act. So I'm gonna temp it just to see where we are to determine if I want to bump the heat down and let it keep cooking, or just keep it at the 325 and let it cook another 15 minutes or so. So let's just see. So I'm gonna stick the thermometer in. And we're getting to about 120. So yeah, we've got a ways to go with this. So I am gonna bump the heat down to 300 degrees. I'm gonna leave the lid down while I cover this up with foil because I don't want all the heat to escape because we don't want to start over. We just want to add in some additional time. So we're gonna add about 15 minutes and I'm gonna go down to, I think 300 will do the trick. Now, this is very hot, so be careful. Look at that pretty design. Isn't that pretty? So it just adds some interest, you know. And at the end, we're gonna put our candied oranges on top and glaze it, of course. So it's a really pretty bread to make. So I hope you guys give it a try. All right, so be careful because this is hot, of course. So when you put the foil around, kind of crimp it on the sides here without touching the pan because the pan is really hot. I mean, it's really hot. But you have to crimp the foil down or you will, it'll fly away in there. I've learned that the hard way. You also have to put pepperoni underneath the cheese on a pizza. Otherwise, it just flies away with the fan when you're baking a pizza. Okay, I think that'll work. So we'll put that in. Now, some of the butter has gotten into the bottom of the pot of the Ninja Foodi. That makes no difference. All right, so we're just gonna put this in. All right, so now we're gonna set the bake roast function again on the Ninja Foodi, and we're gonna take this temp all the way down to 300 because I do want it to cook for about 15 more minutes or so, and I don't want it to overcook on the outside, so I'm decreasing the temperature a little bit. You could also keep it at the 325 and just check on it, you know, and temp it in 10 minutes or whatever. But I'm gonna do it this way. It's worked in my second testing of the recipe. It worked really well this timing and made the bread like come out perfect. So I'm gonna stick with that for me. But you guys play around with the timing and stuff because as long as the bread's done, it doesn't matter how you cook it, right? So the Ninja Foodi finished cooking the bread for 15 more minutes at 300. We decreased the temp. And now I'm just going to do a temp of the bread, and I'm not even going to take it out of the Foodi, and I'm not going to remove the foil in case I need to bake it a little bit longer. I know it's kind of strange to temp bread. Like, I've never done it before, really, but with this bread, because it is dense and I want it to be cooked perfectly, I just feel like just using my judgment isn't enough. I want to really know where that temperature is. Now, if it's at 190, I'm going to pull it out, no problems, and let it cool because it will continue to cook during the cooling time. But if it's at like right now, it's sitting at about 150, maybe 160. So I think I'm going to go a little bit longer in the Ninja Foodi. So let's go another. Let's see, it's 160. We want it to be around 200. So I'm going to put it back in on 300. I'm going to stick with the same temperature. Now, I've tested this recipe so many times. Now, it was done the last time at this cooking time. So, you know, there's so many variables that one time you do a recipe, it can be baked perfectly in 40 minutes, and then sometimes it takes 50 minutes. So, you know, just use your judgment, and if you have a thermometer, just do a quick temp. So we're gonna turn this on, turn the Ninja Foodi on, go to the bake. We wanna go back down. I'm still gonna stay at 300 because I really don't want anything to burn. And, you know, there's a lot of sugar in this bread. So, all right, so 300, and let's set the time for 10 minutes. Now, I would check it. I'll check it probably at about 5, but that should do the trick there. We should get it up to at least 180 or so, 190, and then it'll continue to cook as it cools. So just about 30 seconds to go, and then I'll temp it again. I think we'll be ready to take the bread out and let it cool down after this. I think the 45 minutes is plenty of time to cook. All right, I'm not gonna go back down in my same hole. I'm gonna go over here, and I just feel like this is gonna be done. All right, so we're at 180. I'm gonna call it done, and we're gonna take it out and put it on a rack and let it cool. And then we'll make a little glaze to go on the bread, and we'll assemble our candy slices, and then we'll get to eating this delicious bread. Here, let me take it off. Let me take the foil off so you can see what it looks like now. I'm actually gonna dump it out onto a cooling rack. But you know what? I think I might let it sit in here for 10 minutes. Oh, I don't know. It looks done. All right, let's get the cooling rack here, and we're gonna go ahead and take the bread out of the mold and turn it upside down and let it cool down because it looks like it's done. Now for this, actually, I'm not gonna use these little mitts. I love these little mitts, but I really wanna protect my hands more because this is super hot. So I'm gonna get my Mickey Mouse gloves, as I call them, or as my husband calls them. He says I look like Mickey Mouse when I wear these. But I'm protected. Okay, so now I can just pick this up because these gloves are fantastic. I wish I knew the brand name. I think my mom gave them to me. Let me see if I can. They are G&F products, work protection, heat resistant gloves. I'll find a link and link to them below because these are really fantastic. Even though they're a little big for me, which is why they look so funny, they just work great. So, all right. So let's go ahead and flip this over. Now that butter will have acted as, a greasing agent for our bread. Oh, wow. Isn't that pretty? Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it smells so good. You can smell the orange citrus. You can smell the spices. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. And it's just so pretty. I mean, really, you could serve it. It looks like a big donut. Oh, it looks great. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip it back over because that's the side. I'm actually still going to serve it this way with my decorations in the top, but really, I mean, it looked great the other way as well. Okay, the other thing that you could do if you wanted to, like let's say you wanted to get this, this a little more brown, and you know what, I might do that, is put it on the rack, put it back in the Ninja Foodi, and bake it. And you know what, I think that's what I'm gonna do, just because I wanna get this a little bit more done. I can kind of tell that it's very soft. So I'm just gonna put it on the rack, put it in the Ninja Foodi for probably about 10 minutes and then take it out and let it cool. And it'll cool for probably, you know, several hours, and then we'll glaze it up. Now you could eat it. You could eat it this way, no problem. But I just think letting it cool and putting the glaze and putting the decorations on is worth the time and effort because it really turns out, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, tasty bread. Now that's already cooled off. That's one of the things I like about the Fat Daddy-O pan. So just that quickly, I can actually touch that. The rack, same thing. So it's pretty cool. So just to recap, I'm gonna put this back on and make sure that your little pieces here go down without catching your bread, or you're gonna end up like cutting some of the top off. I'm just gonna put it back in. And I'm just gonna go 10 more minutes on 300. Okay, so we're gonna turn the Ninja Foodi on, hit the bake roast, take the temperature down to 300, and the time down to 10 minutes, and hit start. And this is optional. It's gonna be okay either way, but I just want the outside just to be a little bit more done on the bottom, and I think this will take care of it, also up that temperature, so we're sure to hit 200 degrees. So that extra 10 minutes really did do the trick. I was able to get the outside a little bit more brown like I wanted to. And then what I did was I just let the bread cool for probably a couple of hours. You could probably get away with an hour or so. You could actually not let it cool, and you could serve it warm. The issue is I wanted to put a glaze on, and if I put the glaze on with a warm bread, it would have just totally melted off. So I decided to wait. That's just my preference, honestly. Okay, so to make the glaze, and I did that in the Ninja Foodi, and I put a half a cup of cream, 1 tablespoon of orange zest, from just one large orange was all I needed. And I put in 4 ounces of white chocolate chips. So I let the cream and the orange zest heat up under high saute. And then when that was hot, I put in the chocolate chips and just turn the Ninja Foodi off and let the residual heat melt the chocolate chips. Because keep in mind, you don't want to overheat your chocolate. It will seize up and it becomes a mess to work with. So that was super easy. I mean, you could also heat it in the microwave or on the stovetop with a little skillet. But be careful because you don't want the heavy cream to really get too hot either. You don't want it to burn. Okay, so here's the glaze, and then I let it cool because I didn't want it to be too hot or too runny, or again, it would just go off the cake. So what I'm gonna do here is just take the glaze, going all over the top and letting it drip down the sides. And that's why I have it on this raised cooling rack still, and I also have the parchment. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, so now let's get our orange peels set up. So the only thing I'm doing with these is putting them on as a decoration. You could do that any which way. You could lay them like this. You could, stand them up. You can do whatever you want. What I'm gonna do here is just make like little, folding them in half sort of. And remember those little twists that we did? Is I'm just sort of sticking them right in there. I might use a little bit of this glaze as some glue if any of them don't want to, stick in, but I haven't had any trouble yet. They all seem to stick in, but if you do, just pour a little bit of the glaze over top. And again, you can get it right off of here. This is still clean, so we could use that again. And I might do that because I might want to reglaze this cake as it as it drips off, I might want to put another layer on. And that looks pretty too, because when this thickens, it actually is a little bit lighter. And then you go over with a second layer and it's really pretty, but that's totally optional anyway. So you can also see here with these oranges that any of the excess sugar I'm taking off. I mean, we don't need that much. We've got enough going on in this bread. I'm just setting that down. These are just so cute, I'm telling you. All right, so I'm just gonna take this and go right back over. And there's no rhyme or reason to how you do it. Just scrape it up and glaze it over. Now, if this gets too cool and it's too hard to spread, you can just pop it in the microwave for about 15 seconds, but then you're gonna wanna let it cool off again. So, okay, so you get the gist of this, so we can just keep going over and over and over again and let it cool, and then do it again and do it again until we use up all the glaze, and you'll have a nice pretty design, and it's gorgeous. But for now, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna go ahead and taste it. Oh, I can't wait, the moment of truth. All right, so let's cut into our bread here. Oh, I like the sound of the outside. So that's what I want. It's kind of crunchy on the outside, but a beautiful, like, dense bread on the inside that's gonna be soft and fluffy. So, all right, well, let's break a piece off here. Oh, wow. It looks beautiful. Oh my goodness. So the outside is like a little crispy, like a good crust on a bread. So good though. And then the inside is, like I said, a combination of like cake and bread. Definitely dense, but the flavors are amazing. I mean, the cinnamon and the cloves and the orange and the dried cranberries go so beautifully together. This is definitely a winner. Now let me give a try to the candied orange peel. These should not taste bitter, but they should not taste like super, super sweet either. They should just have a nice flavor. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Oh wow. Now I know this one takes a little bit of time, and you have to let it rise overnight. But it is so worth it. Like, this is awesome. This is a great bread. Definitely a showstopper. I mean, people will be really impressed if you make this bread for a special occasion, or, like I said, a brunch. Let's try a little bit with the glaze. That's the other thing you can do, is you can make a little glaze up and serve it on the side. That's the ticket. Extra glaze, double the glaze, and put it on the side. Oh my goodness. So good.